Hey guys, welcome to Cyborg Kitty. In this video, we are going to write up a function called destroyer. So this is for the assignment seek and destroy. It's an algorithm assignments in free code camp for JavaScript. So the initial goal of this function is to check the initial array. The first argument is always the array, and then the rest of the arguments is what we're going to compare it with. So we're going to see what the rest of the arguments are and make sure those elements are removed from the initial array. So one thing here is that it does not mention what the array is, like how many are there in this element. So it can be 2, it can be 3, it can be 5, it doesn't matter. So all we have to ensure is these repeating values are not there in this element and return that array back as a result of the function. So initially what we're going to do is we want to make an array. It's a second array. Let's just call it comparing array, right? We want to make and first make it an empty array. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through all these arguments, skip the first value, and then push all the rest of them into the array itself. So we have a second array that we're going to compare it with in the first array. So let's do this. So I'm going to start up a for loop here. Less than arguments dot length. So what am I doing here is I'm using arguments. Arguments is by default, it's a default fixed thing for the function. So what arguments is nothing but array of all the arguments that are passed to the function. So for example, if you do arguments and then run it for this value, you would see that it actually returns for the position 0, you have 1, for the argument 1, you have 2, and for argument 2, you have 3. So this is nothing but just an object full of all the arguments that are sent in there. And what I'm trying to do is actually use for loop I equal to 0, I less than arguments dot length I plus plus. So this will be one way to get each argument from the arguments object. But here we don't use 0, we use 1 instead, because we already know that the first input is the array and we don't want that in our second array where we want to do the comparison with. So I'm just going to write array 2 and initialize it to an empty array first. Okay, now that we got this and we know it's going to go through, it's going to iterate through all the arguments starting from the second index, which is 1. And what we're going to do is we're just going to write push. We just want to push it, all the argument, the rest of the values into an array. So let's just write that up. Arguments I. That's it. Now let's just see what happens now. So if you actually run this, you'd see you're getting these two as an argument. So for example, we're just going to add one more. Quickly run it. There we go. So now we are successful in the first part, is trying to separate the comparing values and push them all into an array. So the next what we want to do is we want to filter the initial array depending on the values in the second array. So we're going to do this using the filter function, so filter method. So we know the first index is the initial array itself, and write filter, and let's write the callback function here, function for an element at point, let's just call it x. We want to do some sort of comparison. So what the logic here that we want, we already know that filter only returns all the elements that go through this condition and come out as true. Anything that comes out as false gets kicked out. So what we want to write is just simply put, at certain point, if this element does not exist in the second array, return true. If it does exist, return false. That way, as soon as it sees false, the filter method is going to kick out that element. So let's type it up. Return We're going to use index of to do this because all index of does is checks if the character is in the element. If it is, it returns a positive value. If it's not, it returns a negative value. So return, we're checking it in the second array, index of the particular element in the first array. And then if is greater than 0, that returns true. And true is good because true means that, oh, my bad, wanted less than 0. Because greater than 0 are all positive values. So positive values indicate that, okay, I found this element in here. And those are the elements we don't want. So instead, we're going to write less than 0 and they'll be like, okay, let's see 1. They're going to check for the index of 1 in the second array and be like, okay, I can't find it. So that will be a minus value. That is less than 0. So this condition turns out true. And then the filter element be like, okay, I'm going to keep this value. It keeps 1. And when it comes to 2, it sees index of 2 in the second array and sees the index of 2 is 0. Be like, hey, that does not satisfy this condition. So that's going to be a false and gets vomited out. So if you actually run it, oh, where did I do wrong? Array 0 dot filter. Oh, my bad. Okay, so that's going to be actually arguments 0 because we are going with the arguments object. So if you run it, perfect. There we go. So the reason why I had to change it is because this does not indicate the whole thing. I kind of overlooked that. So basically what's going on is we are pushing arguments object and we are taking from first position till the end and pushing into the second array. And the arguments objects, the initial index, which is 0, is the actual array that we are filtering it from. So once I fix that, and it works perfectly fine. So just to give you a quick review on it, so we used 3 different methods here. We used push method to push all the extra arguments other than the initial one into an array that we are comparing with. And then we used the filter to filter that initial array here, which is on the 0 index of the argument. And then in the filter, we wrote index of method, which checks each character's index in the second array. And if it does not find it, it returns a true value and it gets kept in the array. And then if it does find it, it returns a false value, at which point it gets kicked out. So that's all about seek and destroy. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you did, please do hit that like button. And if you want to see more of my videos, do subscribe to my channel, Cyborg Kitty. And I'll see you on my next video with another challenge and a solution. Have fun coding. Bye.